Welcome to part 2. In this section I'm going to check the clearances on the valves on the bike, and this one's pretty easy to do. Tank comes off. There's tons of room because the Canadian models don't have any smog gear, so the only real clearance issue is against the coil. So I take both coils off on both sides, move them out of the way, hang them off to one side, whatever. The other thing you have to be mindful of on this particular K model and the J model is there's a rubber shroud forward of the valve cover. You can just see it there in front of the valve cover. It's a big sheet of rubber. There I am lifting it. Have to push that out of the way too, so it doesn't throw any foreign objects down into the engine. I like to use a rubber mallet just to loosen up this 13-year-old stationary motorcycle's valve cover. You should also be mindful of the fact that there are all sorts of nuts and bolts that can fall down in here, so I'm being a little loosey-goosey here by allowing the bolts to stay in the valve cover. It's just habit, but I can assure you I am very mindful of foreign objects falling down into the engine because they can be a bugger to get out if they get in the wrong places. And of course I need to spin the engine. I do it by hand. Pull off the timing cover on the right hand side and spin it with a wrench very easily. And my method is, as opposed to reaching in to determine top dead center, I just make sure the lobes on the intake and the exhaust side of a given cylinder are pointed away from the valves like they are right here. There you go. And it's important to measure between the valve and the follower, the bottom part here. And I'll just show you where not to measure. Don't measure up top here. And this particular bike is a dream to set the valves on. You don't have to remove the cams. It has followers between the cams and the valves. You just push these followers out of the way. They're spring-loaded, and then you can get at that shim down in its little socket. It's a dream. Now I double check the measurements on all my shims with the micrometer, the shims that are in the bike and the shims that are going into the bike. I've never had one that was off, but it's just a bit of insurance. Very soft touch, but I do prefer putting the shims in using my fingers as opposed to tweezers. I gently get them into the socket, and then I gently ease them down into their seat. They just kind of get in there and you feel them snap in, and then I roll the follower back into its place. Pretty easy. And I always double check my measurements once I get the proper shim in there just to make sure I'm still on. This bike had 8 of 16 valves that were just a little tight. So that's a good sign. Shows me that the bike was taken care of. It was just due for service, that's all. So once all the valves are done, I clean up and I button down the cover to the appropriate torque specs, and I'm on to the next part.